their decisions. We're glad to have KTVU political analyst Brian Sobel joining us today. Thank you, Brian.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I wanted to ask you, first of all, about seeing this generational split that we saw. 67% of voters who are under 30 or under going to social media. Does that change the way candidates respond to their voter outreach? I mean, we know that it tends to be older voters who tend to be the more reliable in these kinds of elections.
Yeah, there are two things, and you've touched on them, Jana. One is that we know that younger people are getting their information from social media, but disproportionately, those of 29 years of age or less don't vote as much as everybody else. So you've got two things that kind of run into each other there. And so you are seeing candidates trying to cover all of the mediums. In the old days, you ran some TV spots because your broadcast television dominated, certain radio stations dominated. Now the choices by campaigns are myriad. You have to figure out who you're going after, who may want to vote for you, and then you've got to put ads out there that speak to all these different groups. So the Berkeley IGS poll had a wonderful breakdown about how things are changing in the way that we talk with people in campaigns and just generally. I mean, there's enough information there for all of us about how we consume news.
Yeah, so many ways that these candidates nowadays are trying to reach those voters. I'm curious, too, here when we think about sort of the sources of information for voters, as we talk about all of these polls coming out just this week here before Election Day, how much do the polls really matter, and which generation do they matter more to?
Well, they are not mattering as much to younger voters, and we always hope that younger people vote. I mean, that's our future. So we're still looking at ways, and all of these campaigns are looking at ways to get to younger voters, but more than that, Alex, to motivate them to actually get out and vote. And so somehow there has to be a connection there. And so, again, all of this attempt to understand how people consume news and how you can present a candidate to people in terms that they appreciate, that it resonates with them, is the key. And I can tell you there are millions and millions of dollars being spent trying to. We don't have time today, obviously, to talk about polling techniques, the veracity of polling, because it depends on who you're talking to, the various percentages of whether you can decide whether a poll is good or not as good, depending on how many people responded to a poll. There's all sorts of factors that go into it, which is interesting now as we're coming down right to the last hours of the campaign. We've seen, like as an example, the fact that maybe Tom Steyer is edging ahead of Steve Hilton. Very interesting, right? Because that would mean two Democrats go at it, and we get to see a lot more commercials. But on the other hand,
yeah.
Well, and we have certainly heard. We have certainly heard too. People who I have interviewed out in the streets who said, you know what, I'm going to wait a little bit. I want to see what happens. Here we are, kind of like at the 11th hour, tomorrow being the election day, and still you have some people who are in single digits who did not drop out, who are still in the race. I'm wondering, do you think that there is going to be a surge now of people just saying, okay, we've come to this point, here's my ballot, or do you think there is still a little bit of apathy here?
I think there's a lot of apathy, and I think it's because people, while they watched Eric Swalwell leave the race, and many of those people switched to the Javier Becerra camp, there was that, but it wasn't because they were on fire about Becerra. They just selected him as the next person they would support. I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about Tom Steyer, and of course that's on the Democrat side of the aisle. On the Republican side of the aisle, you have Hilton and Chad Bianco, the Riverside sheriff. Bianco has faded, and now what we want to watch and see is what happens to Republican voters. Do they now switch in this last 28 hours to Steve Hilton and make sure that he finishes second? And then what happens with the Steyer and Becerra votes, and where do they go? So it's actually, a lot of people talk about apathy here. For folks like us, I think there's a lot of excitement.
Yeah, with just so much uncertainty here, just one day away from this
Yes.
election here.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't often see that. All right, Brian Sobel, we appreciate the time. Always good to have you on. We'll, I'm sure, be talking here in the coming days.
That's right, in the next
Oh,
24
absolutely.
hours.
Tomorrow. Yes.
All right, sounds good. It's a
Yep,
date.
bye now.
All right,
Yep.
take care, Brian. Good to see you.
Thank you, Brian. Well, state lawmakers say that more than 500,000 Californians are in danger of losing federal food aid